Chapter 4371. Within a star far from the backtracking place. A ray of light fell quickly, then ray of light broke and turned into a sword unparalleled figure. Jian Wushuang's face was not very good-looking. He was faintly aware that the Supreme, who was located in the wild wilderness of the universe, had already come to him. You have to start the bronze ancient tripod. Jian Wu's eyes flickered, and his body quickly broke through the ground and sank into the deep earth. Immediately afterwards, endless sword gas poured out on him. These swords were densely packed, spread out quickly around him, and were buried in the ground. After doing all this, the sword sat cross-legged, first swallowed a few magic drugs to restore his power, and immediately turned over with his right hand. The bronze ancient tripod and Shiliang appeared in his hands. Refine. Jian Wushuang drank softly. Instantly, in the big palm of the slap, a ray of yellowish air rose up from the ridge, and then it was sucked into the bronze ancient tripod. Bang tilde. Suddenly, the bronze ancient tripod made a crackle like never before. In the space inside the bronze ancient tripod, the innate phases of the five elements are intertwined, continually fused together, and began to transform towards a terrorist force that cannot be described in any words. Jian Wushuang slowly closed his eyes, splitting his mind into two purposes, while continuously spreading his sword's air to spread out in the void. While continuously refining the bronze ancient tripod, he observed the changes of the bronze ancient tripod. A transformation began slowly. At the same time, outside the star. Hey! Each breath is different, but they are all powerful glorious gods, like a shooting star, across the dark and bright starry sky, and then fall out of this star. Wu Guang dispersed, revealing the figures of the supreme people. The first one to arrive was the supreme knives with a waist and the head wearing a bucket. He has a strong and majestic breath, but is a medium and supreme. Still faint above that Qinghe supreme. Next to him was the old humpback with a red-faced pustule and an ugly look. This old lady is not good at all, but she is also a middle-aged supreme. She is known as poisonous mother-in-law. She has a venomous power and she understands the power of the avenue. She has set a high-end record for her poisonous death. Jian Wushuang is here. Mad Knife Extreme narrowed his eyes, looked down at the star beneath his feet, and said, "In the center of this star, which is the position where Jian Wushuang sinks into the heart of the earth, a huge kill character is particularly scarlet. Oh, it seems that Jian Wushuang is so precious that it's cheaper for us." A grin appeared on the poisonous mother-in-law's face, her voice filled with irresistible excitement. The two looked at each other, and immediately there was a strong greed in their eyes, flying towards the star. "Jian Wushuang, come out obediently, I know you're here." The poisonous mother-in-law laughed loudly, and her hands were torn apart, and a meatball on the humpback exploded suddenly, bursting out countless green juices, and the smell was extremely extreme. Immediately, these green juices condensed in her hands, forming a poisonous flower, and smashing at the place where the sword unparalleled sank. Boom! Suddenly, the entire star shook, and the earth was smashed into a large pit close to 10,000 miles. Heh! Well hid. The poisonous mother-in-law smiled indifferently, and stepped into the ground at the same time as Mad Knife Supreme. The moment the two stepped on the ground, suddenly, the whole land shook slightly. As Supreme, the two have natural sensibility, and when they see this, they can't help frowning, and they make a flick in their mouths. Without waiting for the two to take any action, the whole land suddenly burst, and cracks cracked like spider web. A sharp sword gas Changhong rose from these cracks. This. Suddenly, both looked shocked and their pupils contracted slightly. Sword chi, the sword spreads over the mountains. The whole number of million swords crisscrossed the void, shattered the sky, and rendered the sky and the earth all. Next moment, these swords suddenly turned, and a burst of sharp sense of coldness erupted, blasting towards Mad Knife Supreme and poisonous mother-in-law. The eagle worm trick. The Mad Knife saw a sneer, and pulled out the long white snow knife hanging from his waist with his right hand, and the divine power surged out. The sword is unparalleled. The sword is unparalleled. We must look at the old man. How long can this sword hold us back? The poisonous mother-in-law also laughed, and a red box emerged out of thin air in her hand. Opening the box, There are almost 10 poisonous needles in different lengths. The poisonous mother-in-law's 10-finger continuous bombs suddenly rose up, and with the poisonous mother-in-law's 10-finger bounce, she suddenly manipulated the poisonous needle as if there were a silk thread in her body, and smashed the surrounding swords. And just when the two were trapped by the sword-filled atmosphere of the house, outside of this star, several gods rushed in and turned into supreme figures. Oh! I can't think of Mad Knife Supreme and Poisonous Mother-in-law, but one step ahead of us. An evil charm man brows lightly with a smile. Next to him, a thin figure said, "Oh. Shoo, let these two men help us to wipe out the sword, and then we will shoot." This octopus youth is truly a barren land of the universe. The contemporary patriarch of the Magic Chapter family was promoted to become the Supreme not long ago. It is good. The evil young man had a pair of narrow fox eyes and nodded when he heard the words. Boom boom. On this star, countless swords smashed towards Mad Knife Supreme and Poisonous Mother-in-law like a violent storm, and then were smashed by both. For both, although these sword chi can cause some troubles, they cannot pose a threat to them in the slightest. After a while, the millions of swords in the hall were quickly obliterated by the speed that was visible to the naked eye, and the two mad swordsmen and poisonous mother-in-law were getting closer to the position of the sword unparalleled. Deep in the heart, the sword is sitting cross-legged. The bronze ancient tripod in front of him is undergoing the most crucial change. I can see that in this bronze ancient space, the fire of Dinghua, the water of Hai, the gas of Jiajin, the air of Otoki, and the air of Si, like the 5 different forces, continually merge and repel. The spirit of the 5 elements is phase by phase and phase by phase. They have the same origin in their own lives, but each has the ultimate strength and cannot be integrated at all. For example, the gas of water and fire, and the gas of gold and wood, etc., they are the most hostile forces in the world. How could this be? Jian Wushuang's brow froze, and he kept meditating. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang felt more and more supremes, and his eyes could not help but be determined and determined. Today, the 5 elements are fused, and if they can't, they have to be fused. Chapter 4372. Jian Wushuang's divine power was no longer reserved, and they all leaked out, pouring into this bronze ancient tripod, urging the fusion of the 5 element. That feeling is like trying to stuff the soil into the gold and iron, brutal to the extreme. Boom boom. Suddenly, the bronze ancient tripod trembled frantically, making an embarrassing click. But Jian Wushuang's face showed a touch of joy. He felt that the vitality of the 5 elements finally showed signs of integration under his strong urging. However, just when the 5 elements of qi merged at the last moment, a barrier suddenly appeared, blocking the 5 elements of qi. This is... Jian Wushuang couldn't help but sank, and the magic power spreading in the bronze ancient tripod suddenly felt a villain appear out of thin air. The villain's hair was drooping, his face was cold, his eyes were heavy pupils, and his body was full of cold and murderous spirit, which made him cold all over with just a glance. However, the villain's expression was numb and rigid, and he seemed to have no sense of autonomy. Imprint. Jian's eyes flickered. If he was right, this villain should be the mark left by the Bronze Master in the Bronze Master. Then, with reference to the Supreme Master Li, this bronze ancient tripod that should have been called the Wuding Chowding tripod, the previous owner was. 100,000 prehistoric times, the universe recognized the first genius, Jedong. Jian's eyes skyrocketed sharply, that is to say, this villain's mark was left by the original Jedong. I'm afraid that this bronze ancient tripod tried to escape several times before. Now the innate nature of the 5 elements can't be merged. I'm afraid that all the marks left by the masters of this world are making trouble. Jian Wushuang's mouth gradually evoked a sneer. Immediately, countless divine powers poured out and wiped away towards this mark. For the current Jian Wushuang, let alone a mark left by Jade East in the past, even if it is now Jiedong, his sword Wushuang is not afraid of it. A muffled noise came, and the villain was wiped away by the sword unparalleled. The innate air of 5 elements is unhindered and merges together. Stars on the surface. Ha, the sword is unparalleled. Now the sword you left has been destroyed. How can you stop me? The mad sword wields his sword, smashes the last sword, and opens his mouth and laughs. Immediately, he swept to the position where the sword Muzu sank into the center of the earth, reached out and broke the ground, and wanted to grab the sword Muzu. The poisonous mother-in-law's expression was bleak, and nearly 10 poisonous needles flashing with cold mansions hung quietly. Her heart was ready, and after the sword Wushuang was caught, she directly gave a fatal blow, including the star, the evil young man with narrow eyes and the head of the 9-claw magic chapter family with a black octopus head. The same power came out, waiting for opportunity. Just at this moment. Boom boom. Suddenly, a shocking explosion exploded. The whole world seemed to be in a doomsday, trembling with madness. The earth began to collapse, the mountains began to collapse, the sky began to break, and everything in this star began to break. How is this going? Suddenly, the face of Mad Knife and other people changed. Next moment, the entire star burst. A vast and boundless, as if through the chaos of the universe, the ancient atmosphere of heaven and earth flooded, rising. The starry sky of the whole universe makes a sound of avenues for it, as if congratulating in heaven and earth, the birth of a treasure. A wave of surging air was like a shock wave, and then it spread. The poisonous mother-in-law's fleshy face suddenly changed rapidly. Retreat first. The Mad Knife extreme and poisonous mother-in-law looked at each other, both stepping forward, and quickly hurried back. It wasn't until they withdrew hundreds of thousands of feet in succession that they stopped to look at the airwaves with suspicion. A scent of kung fu, the air of the sky gradually dissipated, revealing a black hare in black, sitting cross-legged, with a grim figure of a huge scarlet kill on top of his head. He closed his eyes slightly, and in front of him, a bronze ancient tripod slowly rotated, and the chaos breath came from this bronze ancient tripod. This is the Wu Ding Chao Ding. Others haven't found anything yet, but the evil young man's eyes are violently opened, and he is terrified. Next moment. No. This chaotic horror fell on Jianwu's hands. We are no opponents, run away. The evil young man said quickly. Over the years, he has been searching for the long-disappearing Wu Ding Chao Ding. Although I do not know why Wu Ding Chao Ding fell into the hands of Jian Wushuang, he deeply understands how horrible Wu Ding Chao Ding is. The patriarch of the magic chapter standing next to him, frowning at hearing the words, felt that this evil young man had made a big deal, and said at will, "Shu, this chaotic Ding Wu Ding has also heard of this seat. It is indeed a big killer, but that sword is unparalleled, but the ultimate master is Xiu, we don't have to be so afraid. You do not understand." The evil young man shook his head again and took a deep breath. "Marujong Patriarch, if you want to stay, just stay here by yourself, I'll take a step." Having said that, the evil young man turns and flees. Just then, a faint voice came. "Since it's all here, leave it all." Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes, and a flash of forest cold flashed in his eyes. Immediately, he looked down at the bronze ancient tripod in front of him. I saw that the bronze ancient tripod has undergone earth-shaking changes. Although it is still incomplete, a shocking picture appeared on him. I saw the original simple tripod, with the sun, moon, stars hanging, flowers, birds, insects and beasts, and heaven and earth settled down as if pulling up a vibrant world map. The fusion of the 5 elements is for chaos. Photo. The next moment, a dark yellow chaotic power was drawn by Jian Wushuang from the Wu Ding Chao Ding. Suddenly, a great terror between life and death suddenly appeared in everyone's heart. Hiss. This is power of chaos. Everyone took a sip of air conditioning, and their hearts were trembling. The evil-looking youth turned pale and his lips were shaking. Before the 100,000 chaos era, the Jedong Supreme District has a mortal body, and it is with the Wui Chaoding Ding that the Supreme Master is like a dog. Now, how terrible is the chaos of Wu Zun falling in the hands of the sword? You know, in addition to Wu Chaos Ding, compared to Jedong in that year, there is another big killer, the Taro Excalibur. In addition, Jian Wushuang is a special life with a super-perfect level, and there are great magical powers such as Daybreak and Yongye, and they realize the power of the road. The horror of the sword unparalleled will far surpass the Jedong of the year. Escape. You must escape. The 4 supreme hairs were upright, almost at the same time, blazing in different directions. Today, none of you can escape. Jian Wushuang's voice is cold, such as Wanli Glacier. The next moment, the power of chaos was shot hard. And farther away, there were other supremes, rushing quickly with smirks. 3 days later, an earth-shattering news came out of the wild wilderness of the universe and quickly swept the entire universe. Jian Wushuang, who disappeared for thousands of years, was born again in the wild wilderness of the universe. With his own strength, he even slaughtered 9 supreme gods. Suddenly, the universe was horrified and horrified. Chapter 4373. When Jian Wushuang heard the news of the 9th supreme divine realm within 3 days, it suddenly swept across the universe with a spark of sparks. At first, there were still people who didn't believe it, but when a cosmic wild wasteland was supreme, he ran out of his body, and informed the whole cosmic wild wasteland that there would be no supreme divine realm. All of a sudden, the entire universe is in an uproar. As the master, slaughter the realm. What is this concept? Suddenly, the whole universe was turbulent, and many people were jealous of rewards. Those who planned to find sword unparalleled, hurried back and quickly returned. At this moment, Jian Wushuang steadily went to prison in the name of the first day of eternity. There is no moisture at all, and some people claim that Jian Wushuang is the myth of the whirl. Inside Daewu Shrine. Daewu Shrine's main black feather sits on the main seat, the other supremes are on both sides, and the atmosphere is especially dignified. Master, what shall we do next? One supreme asked with a complex expression. Heiyu Supreme has not spoken, and no emotion can be seen on his face, but if someone carefully observes, he will find that Heiyu Supreme's right hand hidden under the black robe is shaking. Unexpectedly, this is the climate after all. His fists clenched, and his eyes were thick with unwillingness. He did everything, and even invited the dragons to shoot. The only thing he didn't want to see today is to kill the sword in the cradle in advance. Unexpectedly, a total of 6 forces joined forces to let Jian Wushuang escape. In just 10,000 years, Jian Wushuang grew up to kill the Supreme Being. Convergence of thoughts, a gloom of sadness can't help but appear on Supreme Black's face. Dear Lord, in my opinion, we may not have the chance to strangle the sword unparalleled. Otherwise, once this opportunity is missed, the universe race will begin, and Jian Wushuang will get 10 futon listening positions at the universe race, breaking through the supreme success. I'm afraid that by then, the entire universe will no longer have a place for us in Daewu Temple. The extremist who spoke before, his eyes twinkled, and he said in a deep voice. Oh! Heiyu Supreme heard an eyebrow raised, and said with a bitter smile, Green Dog, now the 4 Chief Supremes of the Life Shrine, plus the newly born Chief Supreme 9 Kings, have been staring at this seat, but whenever they leave Daewu Temple, they will come to stop. You say, where is the opportunity to kill swordsmen? I saw the Supreme known as the Green Dog, smiled slightly, and said, the Lord of the Palace does not have to worry. There is nothing unique about the sword. It is not enough. Why should the Lord of the Lord take a shot? As long as I am alone, it is enough to suppress him. With that said, there was a rush of self-confidence on Green Dog Supreme's face. This self-confidence does not come from vainness, but because he is the number 2 figure in the main hall of Daewu Shrine. He has the highest level of supreme strength and has reached the peak. Black Feather Supreme heard a groan. Seeing the hesitation of Supreme Black Feather, Supreme Blue Dog said, the Lord of the Palace, don't think about it. I have analyzed the strength of Jian Wushuang, which is almost equal to the Supreme Supreme. The ability to slay the Supreme Supreme depends on the strength of the Supreme Supreme. Heiyu Supreme heard a long sigh of relief and understood that it was important. He nodded and said, that's good. Green Dog, this time you must bring back the swordless pair of sword. Yes. The Blue Dog arched his hand with respect and bowed down. Taishu Temple. The Wu Ding Chaos Ding. How unfair the sky is. These universe treasures even fell into the sword without hand. The expression of Bingyu Extreme is ugly, and the gloom in his eyes is almost condensed into substance. The opportunity of the sword unparalleled made him all jealous. He only got the Taro Excalibur. He even got a treasure that is not inferior to the Taro Excalibur. Master God, what shall we do now? The owner of the second hall said, his face was cloudy and uncertain. Bingyu Supreme took a deep breath, relieved his mind, and his voice was extremely determined. Sword Wushuang must die. Otherwise, once he breaks through the Supreme, he truly masters the Taro Excalibur, but he is afraid of the entire universe. No one will rule him. The Lord of the Second Hall nodded in agreement, and said, "The Lord of the Hall, then leave it to me to kill Sword Wushuang." Bingyu Supreme heard the light flashing, then waved his hand and said, "No. This time Sword Wushuang is the last chance before the Grand Cosmos event. It is extremely important. You must kill with one strike, and there must be no risk." After a pause, the eyes of Bingyu Supreme suddenly turned into a cold road. "So, this time, the sword is unparalleled and killed by this seat." "What?" The Lord of the Second Hall heard the words, and couldn't help but be shocked. The Bingyu Supreme was a half-step invincible supreme, and he was also the master of one party. If he went to cut and kill Jian Wushuang himself, he would be in the entire universe set off stormy public opinion. However, the Lord of the Second Palace didn't advise him much. He knew that Bingyu Supreme had already become jealous of Jian Wushuang. If Jian Wushuang did not die in one day, his heart would be disturbed. "Compliance." He arched. Jodi Pavilion, headquarters. Round table representing the highest conference. Purple hair, red ears, and heartbeats are sitting on the round table, and the faint afterglow shines through the glass on the round table to form a mottled light block. Hey, perfect level of special life, and a very high level of spirituality in spiritual practice. In addition to Tai Luo Excalibur, I also received the Wu Ding Chao Ding Ding. These opportunities are so good that even this seat can't help but feel jealous. Heartbeat Supreme shook his head and laughed. There are only a few extreme Taoist soldiers in the universe. It was unexpected that two of them fell on Jian Wushuang's body, which is a godsend. The red-eared Supreme is also known as Chidao. Although the purple-haired boy did not speak, a bitter smile appeared on the face of the perennial iceberg. Supreme Heartbeat took a look at him and said, "Zephyr, now you know, why did you persuade you not to be against Jian Wushuang and the Palace of Life? Is this sword Wushuang with 100,000 prehistoric chaos? Jedong, like the 300 Taro before the chaos, are all talents who can dominate the suppression of an era. Even sword Wushuang is stronger than Jedong and Teo." The purple-haired boy nodded when he heard the words, and couldn't help feeling a little bit, and replied, "With the body of the master, even the supreme divine realm, the universe does not know how many chaotic eras, no such characters have appeared. I'm afraid that kill the powers that have gone to the shrine of life must have a headache now." After a pause, Zephyr Juvenile looked at the Heartbeat, and continued, "Heartbeat, what shall we do next? Do we need to help Jian Wushuang again?" Heartbeat Supreme didn't rush to answer, but squinted his eyes, looked through the glass to the far end of the universe, and said, "No, Jian Wushuang, this little guy has wings, and then, on his own, once after experiencing this calamity, he will truly become and be refined into steel." After hearing the words, the Zephyr boy thought for a moment or two, and then nodded, "Then say it as you please." When he heard the words and smiled, he didn't reply, but looked at the distant eyes with a look of expectation. "Jian Wushuang, the old man would like to see what step you can take in the end." Chapter 4374. After the news of Jian Wushuang's rebirth came out, after the people in the universe accept the initial shock, even if Shen began to look forward to it, how would the six top forces with a life-and-death feud with Jian Wushuang react? Sure enough, as expected from the world, except for the dragons who have not expressed their stand for the time being, these six forces have sent the top powerful men in their respective strengths to the wild wasteland of the universe to intercept the swords. It is worth mentioning that the Taishu Temple and the Kaiyang God Kingdom were even shot by the Lord of the Forces. The newly increased God Emperor Bingyu is the Supreme Emperor, plus the Kaiyang God Kingdom Kaiyang God Emperor. These two people are half-step invincible supreme existence. This cannot help but feel the emotions of everyone in the universe. I do not know whether to envy Jian Wushuang or mercy Jian Wushuang. Not only envious of the sword warriors, but the ultimate of the realm, they can stir up the situation in the entire universe, and even attracted the real big shots in the universe, doomed to fame, but also pity the sword warriors' disaster, and finally killed Ju when the Supreme lives. he will face a more severe and terrifying situation. This time the people who shot the major forces have already figured out the strength of Jian Wushuang clearly, and even overestimated the results in the future, in order to kill in one blow, no accident. And at this moment, the dragon who had fallen into silence for a while, finally heard the news. Long Qing, the fourth-generation bloodline leader of the dragon race, will go out to the wild wilderness of the universe and kill the sword unparalleled. Who is Long Qing? At the beginning, the champion of the battle for the dragon race, the prisoner of the dragon was in the battle for the throne, was defeated in the hands of Long Qing, was deprived of the supreme divine realm, and driven out of the dragon race. As soon as this news came out, the universe suddenly became more boiling. Almost everyone is convinced that this time, Jian Wushuang will be in trouble. Dominate the doorway of the ancient sky. A strong-blooded and sturdy figure with a self-defeating face, he rushed out of the ancient sky in one step. Fortunately, at the last minute we finally got the third invitation to the cosmopolitan event. The figure looked down at the white jade in his hand, and an irresistible joy appeared on his face. This person is arrogantly the overlord who finally got the qualification to invite the universe races. Thousands of years after Jian Wushuang left Shinkong Ancient Road was once again plunged into a chaotic war. Many people left Jian Meng, but the earliest group of people who followed Jian Wushuang's core team stayed. Faithfully maintains the development of the Sword League. Overlord is one of them. After some competition, he not only got the invitation place for the last cosmopolitan event, but even went further. He had broken through the ultimate dominance realm dozens of times earlier than Jian Wushuang, and was invincible to dominate the peak strength. At this moment, when he went further, he was suddenly away from the supreme divine realm, but it was just a thin line away. He was about to step away, telling his family ancestors the good news. The tip of his ears suddenly moved, and the words sword warriors were faintly heard. Well, what happened to the leader? The overlord raised his eyebrows, then swept to the center of the crowd, and asked Shen, I asked you, what did you say that sword unparalleled? What did you mean? This group of people discussing sword unparalleled, but they are all the 5th level and those who have just stepped into the ultimate master. Feeling the overwhelming blood of the overlord, their hearts trembled, and they did not dare to conceal the slightest. Everything is said out. The overlord heard Jian Wushuang's deeds and couldn't be calm for a long time. It was only after a long time that he smiled silently. I thought I had made great progress in my cultivation. I can already compete with the leader. I never imagined that in just tens of thousands of years, the leader had grown to the point of slaughtering supreme. This cannot help but let the overlord be a little discouraged. The original cultivation of the great joy and the joy of being eligible for the cosmopolitan event cannot help but fade down a lot. Just feel that the more chasing Jian Wushuang, the more difficult it is to look back. Finally, the overlord shook his head, his eyes flashed for a while, and his face was full of thoughts. Dragon, Taishu Temple, Daewu Temple. These 6 forces are all the top forces in the universe. The leader is chased by them. I'm afraid they will struggle. No, I have to go back to the family quickly and ask my ancestors to take action to protect the leader. After some thoughts, the overlord stepped forward and quickly swept towards an unknown star field in the universe. The wilderness of the universe. It is located on the top of the mountain. Jian Wushuang sat quietly crossing his knees, covered with black blood, and the mountain wind blew his loose hair, revealing a cold and indifferent face. Under him, the blood of God flowed all over the place, dyeing the mountain in red, and one of the 9-claw octopus head was particularly conspicuous. 3 days ago, Jian Wushuang held the Chaosian Ding of Wushu and chased him all the way. Finally, he sat on the Tiantong mountain and cut the 9 supremes. Among them, the person with the highest strength is the patriarch of the Mozhang tribe, the highest state of supremacy. And after he beheaded the 9 supremes, the huge killing word hanging on his head has become even more enchanting and deep. No wonder then that Jedong was able to slaughter the supreme as a dog. This chaotic tribe was really too powerful. Jian Wushuang looked at the chaos Ding Wu Ding in front of him, and his eyes kept flashing thinking. After the awakening of the chaos, the spirit of the 5 elements intersect, turning into the universe is not born, and the chaotic power of chaos is really overbearing to the extreme. The supreme divine power that used to be in the eyes of Jian Wushuang, after encountering the power of chaos, it was almost like an egg touching a stone. It was totally unbeatable. It is by virtue of this chaotic power that both sides of the sword slayed the 9 supremes in succession. However, this mighty chaotic tripod seems to be powerful, not destruction, but creation. The sword murmured to himself. At first, he thought that the Wu Ding Chao Chao Ding was like the Taro Excalibur, and it was a Xeon attacking magic weapon, but after careful observation, he found that it was not the case. Because, he felt that although the Emperor's Chaos Ding was powerful, the power of that chaotic power had reached its limit. That is, even if he broke through to the Supreme Realm or even the Invincible Supreme Realm, he would use the Emperor Chaos Ding again. The same can only be used as powerful as he is now. By that time, the attack will appear weak. The Tai Luo Excalibur is a treasure born purely for killing and attacking. At present, it seems that it is not as powerful as the Chaos Ding of Wushu. The sword is unparalleled and can only use a few blows. But that's because Jian Wushuang hasn't broken the Supreme Realm and hasn't really mastered the Taro Excalibur. Once he truly masters the Taro Excalibur, his power will be more horrible than this Chaoyang Ding. If I'm not mistaken, this Ding Chao Chao Ding is basically a magic weapon for attack, but creation. Create the world. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, and the divine power was immersed in the chaos space in the Chaos Ding Wu, where the 5 elements combined into chaos, which is gestating the universe of life. However, it seems that because of the incompleteness of the chaos, the power of chaos has not really given birth to the life of the universe. Once I find other fragments of the Chaoxian tripod, I can really supplement the Chaoxian tripod. Maybe, in this chaotic space, you can really create life in the universe. Chapter 4375. Creation. What a magnificent word. Even if it is Jian Wushuang, I can't help thinking about it here. Until a long time passed. I think a little far away. For me, it is the last word to break the supreme. Jian's eyes flickered, and after taking a deep breath, he put away the Wu Ding Chao Ding. In a moment, the battle in the ancient Road of the Stars should end. At this moment, that is to say, the grand event of the universe is about to start. In addition to breaking through the supreme, he can no longer make inroads. The only thing he can do is quietly wait for the cosmopolitan event to open. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang sat on the top of the mountain, letting the severe squall wind brush his face, and closed his eyes slowly. The time passed day by day, just before the cosmic event was about to start, and Jian Wushuang felt the jade handed to him by Master Lan, and became more and more throbbing. Boom! Suddenly, a sound of breaking air came from afar. Sword unparalleled. A cold drink exploded, and I saw an electric light, blasting at high speed. At the beginning, he was still at the edge of the universe, but it was just a small black spot. At the next moment, the small black spot suddenly enlarged in the pupil of Jian Wushuang, appearing in front of the sword Wushuang. The electric light dissipated and turned into a man in a black robe who wore a black robe and covered the entire face with only a pair of scarlet pupils exposed. Who are you? Jian Wushuang opened his eyes and looked at him. You don't need to know who I am. The man in black robes was hoarse and his eyes were scarlet. You just need to know that this seat is specially ordered by the Lord Tyri, and comes to take your life. The words fell, the man in the black robe turned his right hand, and a black trident appeared in his hands. He had no intention to talk to Jian Wushuang more. The supreme divine power surged, and he threw the trident directly, banging fiercely towards Jian Wushuang's head. Jian Wushuang's pupils shrunk slightly, and the whole person quickly rose into the sky, avoiding the blow. The trident slammed heavily on Tongtian Mountain, who sat cross-legged with the sword without arms. Instantly, the entire Tongtian Mountain broke and collapsed, raising the sky with smoke and sand. Chopper star. An icy word sounded, and immediately afterwards, I saw a sharp blue sharp sword rainbow cut out from the smoky sky, breaking all the way into the void, and coming forth from all directions. Sculpture of the worm. The man in black robe faced Zhenhong didn't care. He grabbed it with his right hand, and immediately grabbed the sharp Zhenhong. Sword unparalleled, use your Taro Excalibur and Chaos Ding directly. He faintly opened his mouth, and immediately, a top supreme cultivation acted like a bomb, dropped like a bomb on a calm lake, and the entire starry sky was boiling, as if he couldn't withstand this great force, cracking numerous cracks. Top supreme. Jian Wushuang trembled, and his heart sank immediately. He guessed that the 6 major forces would not let him go, but he did not expect that the 6 major forces would look down on him so much, and sent the top supreme to intercept and kill him as the ultimate master. You know, who is the top supreme? Extreme, each one is a big name with a surname in the universe, enough to open up a kingdom of God and become an overlord of eternity. Then I do as you wish. Although Jian Wushuang was jealous, his eyes were not afraid. Under the pinch of his right hand, Wu Ding's chaos ding was held by him. Go with. He gave a low drink, and instantly, the power of the black chaotic Hongmeng was drawn by Jian Wushuang, as if the heavy water of Tianhe was held in his hand, and he slammed away towards the black robe man. Is this the power of Wu Xing's chaos? The black robe man's eyes flickered brightly, his hands pushed forward fiercely, and endless supreme divine power poured out from his hands, hitting the power of chaos. Suddenly, the 2 worldly forces intersect, and suddenly burst out in the air. The entire starry sky began to collapse under the impact of these 2 forces, turning into nothingness. The black robe man's arms cuffs exploded, revealing his lean arms. However, he did not retreat. Well, that's all. The next moment, a low smirk uttered in his mouth, he quickly performed the magic, tearing both sides. A shocking scene happened. This chaotic force, like the heavy waters of the Tianhe River, was torn apart by this black robe man. Jian Shuangshuang saw this, and his face was gloomy to the extreme. It seems that the limit of the attacking power of the Chaoyang Ding is to kill the Supreme. Although stepping in will cause some trouble, it is not fatal. The next moment, Jian Wu's eyes flickered, and when he stepped on his right foot, he quickly retreated back. Nowadays, it is obviously unwise to choose to shake this top extreme. It is better to avoid the edge first and drag it to the Cosmos Conference. There was a hint in his heart that the grand event of the universe will start in these days. Want to escape? The man in the black robe sneered, his body turned into a shuttle, and turned into a lightning again, chasing towards the sword unparalleled. The figure of them quickly disappeared under this starry sky. Soon after the 2 left, there were a few more lights, one after another. Just left. Bingyu Supreme stepped in the void, and a pair of silver pupils turned slightly the color of thought flashed in his eyes, and then he directly performed the technique of large movement, far faster than the speed of Jian Wushuang and the black robe man, towards the second. Sweep away. I saw that his body flickered like a light spot, and each flicker was 1,000,000 miles away, flickering directly from one starfield to another. Like the Bingyu Supreme, the Emperor Kaiyang, the Lord of the Blood Temple, and the Green Dog Supreme of the Dayu Temple all arrived at the star domain left by Jian Wushuang, and each performed their own magical skills, closely following Jian Wushuang. And farther away, a gigantic 6-clawed dragon, shuttled through the clouds and stars, swallowing the sun and the moon, wandering through the sky. The light gold eyes in his eyes did not contain the slightest emotion. This time the dragon tribe sent to kill the sword unparalleled, the 4th generation of the dragon leader, Long Qing. The black-robed man sent by the great kingdom of the sun followed behind Jian Wu's body, as if it were a cat and a mouse, and he constantly waved his trident and smashed it towards the sword god body. Damn! Jian Wushuang is constantly wielding the power of chaos to block the attack of this black robe man. Fortunately, in this bronze ancient tripod, the powers of the 5 elements are mutually reinforcing, and there is a constant flow, which can be inexhaustible. Otherwise, the fear of this black robe man's casual attack can cause him an incalculable injury. The ultimate difference between the ultimate dominator and the top extreme is too big. The gulf between the 2 is almost like a heaven. If there was only this person, I would still have the confidence to defeat or escape, but Jian Wushuang felt that, not far away from him, there were several roads that were not weaker than this black robe man, and even more powerful breath, and he was rapidly pulling into the distance with her. Chapter 4376. Jian Wushuang, give up resistance. The truth of this seat tells you that in addition to this seat to kill you, This time there is the house owner of the Blood Temple, the Kaiyang God Emperor of the Kaiyang God Kingdom, and the Taishu Temple. Bingyu Supreme, the Blue Dog Supreme of Daewoo Temple, and the 4th generation Dragon Blood Dragon. Each of them is not weaker than the existence of this seat. Unless the invincible Supreme comes forward to protect you, you will not escape this time. The man in black robe said. Seeing Jian Wushuang's no response, he shook his head and continued to say, "If Jian Wushuang, if you are acquaintances, obediently fall into the hands of this seat can make you die a little easier, but if you die those hands, I am afraid that it is not so easy to die easily." Noise. Before he finished speaking, Jian Wushuang gave him a cold look and continued to fly forward. Stubbornness. Seeing this, the man in the black robe couldn't help humming, and the endless supreme divine power condensed into a ball in his hands. Pushing forward, he suddenly shuttled through the void, like a knife cutting mud, breaking the force of chaos and hitting sword warriors on the back. Although this ball has been destroyed by most of its power with the power of chaos, it is still far from being the ultimate master for Jian Wushuang, and it suddenly smashed most of the body of Jian Wushuang. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang is a perfect chaotic special creature. In just a blink of an eye, his body was instantly reorganized, and a sword was backhanded, and Yongyi sword art was directed towards this black robe man. The black robes are wrapped in endless black mist, and they are dragged into the kingdom of eternal night. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang was slightly relieved. Just as he was going to continue to fly forward, suddenly, an ice-cold sound came out in front of him. Sword unparalleled, you can't escape laugh. The next moment, a surpassing Jian Wushuang, and even surpassing the majestic strength of the black robe man, came to the world, and directly blocked the nearby starry sky. Immediately, Jian Wushuang saw the figure of Bingyu Supreme and slowly gathered in front of him. Bingyu Supreme has no expression, and there is no trace of sadness and joy in his eyes. Looking at Jian Wushuang's eyes is like looking at an ant who can pinch to death. Jian Wushuang's heart sank straightly. After all, can't you escape? Before waiting for Jian Wushuang to respond, several figures came to block the starry sky firmly. Kaiyang Emperor, Lord of the Blood Temple, Blue Dog Extreme. The breath emitted by the three of them is equally powerful, and even the Kaiyang Emperor is also invincible and supreme. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang's face couldn't help smirking. All retreats have been blocked. Has become the enemy of all the world, must die. Sword unparalleled, do it yourself. Don't let this block shoot, don't try to escape with your magical powers, or imagine who can save you. Bingyu Supreme looked at Jian Wushuang up and down, and then said lightly. His expression of optimism and sorrow was like the in charge of life and death, who sentenced Jian Wushuang to death. The sword is unparalleled. If you blame it, blame your talents for being too high and your chances too good. Once you break through the supreme, the balance in the universe that is hard to maintain will be broken by you. The Kaiyang God Emperor shook his head and said, Jian Wushuang, you have come to this stage today, you are all responsible for it. If you get to know each other early and hand over the Taro sword, how can it be today? Yes, do NT take what belongs to you. Do NT take it. If you take it, you have to pay for it. You do NT know why you do NT fit. Several others said. At this moment, Jian Wushuang is not the first genius in the universe, nor is it a perfect special life. In their eyes, it is just a dying ant. Jian's eyes glanced around and swept across their faces, but his expression gradually recovered and calmed down. Death. In fact, from the moment he picked up the Tai Luo divine sword, beheaded the dragon, and never bowed his head under the pressure of the 6 major forces, he was already mentally prepared. Now he is not surprised by this ending. It only made him feel guilty and regrettable that the Life Shrine was severely wounded and killed for him, and the White Tiger Supreme died for him, but he could not avenge them. This, after all, it's hard. Just when Jian Wushuang was lost in thought, a rumbling sound came from the distant sky. I saw a 6-pronged golden dragon swaying from the endless void, swallowing clouds and spitting clouds, and finally, under a flash of golden light, turned into a young man wearing a gold robe, double horns above his head, and a majestic face. This person is the leader of the 4th generation blood of the dragon family, Long Qing. The strength of the 6 great strangling swords unparalleled is finally here. After everyone saw Long Qing's arrival, their pupils shrank slightly, and then their expressions became more restrained. Long Qing's face was expressionless, and he didn't even look at the other supremes present, but instead stared directly at Jian Wushuang and said indifferently, "You are Jian Wushuang? You killed Long Han's waist." He. Jian Wushuang heard his convergent thoughts, glanced at him, and twitched his lips, asking, "Are you asking knowingly, nonsense?" Long Qing heard the words, his eyes suddenly froze, his face gloomed, and the murderous flashed, the sharp teeth. "The sword is unparalleled. It seems that you are still not fast enough to die." Jian Wushuang smiled with disdain. For him today, multiple Long Qings and fewer Long Qings will not affect his ending. He doesn't matter anymore. The only thing he wants now is to exhaust all his strength before he dies and pull someone to be buried with him. Even if his sword is undead, it will not be a salty fish that can be slaughtered by anyone. The sleepy beast still fights, not to mention his sword unparalleled. "Well, Kai is changing, let's do it," Moringa said coldly. A ridged ice sword was held in his hand, a chill radiated down the ice sword, frozen 3 feet in the void. The other supreme masters nodded their heads, and each began to save and strike. Jian Wushuang fell to death instantly. What surprised them, however, was, at this moment, Jian Wushuang took the lead. Talented, supernatural. Talented, amazing life. Dragon blood mystery, divine power burns. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's divine power rose suddenly, and the divine body adjusted to the strongest peak state. Under the instant blessings of various realms and supernatural powers, Jian Wushuang represents the breath of ultimate dominance, which is a step further. Next moment, Jian's eyes suddenly turned, looking at Long Qing. "Go die." The Wu Ding Chao Ding was first taken out by Jian Wushuang, took out the power of chaos, and smashed his head in the face of Long Qing. Taro Excalibur. Immediately after that, Jian Wushuang once again drew his right hand and took out the Taro Excalibur. The horror of the apex of the peak of the road power poured into the Taro Excalibur and chopped it towards Long Qing. A vague figure of the blue-shirted sword reappears in the world. Wu Xing Chao Ding and Tai Luo Excalibur are the 2 strongest killing moves of Jian Wushuang today. One of these 2 killing moves came out, and the whole starry sky burst into a broken voice. They were a little bit stuck and burst slightly. However, this is not the end. Jian Wushuang crushed the jade card on the waist again. There are 2 top powers of the supreme blood. All killing moves, at the same time, lock on the gloomy Long Qing. Chapter 4377. Bang! At this moment, the sky and the earth changed, and the sun and the moon shattered. Long Qing looked at Jian Wushuang who had killed him, and immediately understood Jian Wushuang's thoughts. Angrily replied with a smile, "Jian Wushuang, is it because you also deserve to take this seat and die?" He opened his mouth, only to see the dark clouds in his mouth, thunder shuttle, countless energy trembling. Then, all these energy condensed, turned into a wave of destruction, and blasted fiercely towards Jian Wushuang. Click! In an instant, the blockade enchanted by several supreme cloths broke. This wave of destruction was the first to kill with Jian Wushuang, the power of chaos. There was a loud roar between the 2, as if chaos reopened, everything was silent, and a huge black shock wave seemed to condense into substance and spread out fiercely. Not to mention this killing move of the 2, just this shock wave can kill all the strongest below the supreme, even the elementary supreme, will be shaken and fallen by this shock wave. Is this the power of chaos? Bingyu Supreme, Blood Temple Master, Green Dog Supreme, and others looked at this scene. First, they rushed away the shockwaves, and then squinted their eyes, and a strange color flashed in their eyes. Although this might cannot threaten them, it is enough for an ultimate master to cross several realms and pose a threat to the Supreme, which is really powerful. After Jian Wushuang's death, it's okay for the tailored Excalibur, or for other opportunities. This seat is for you. The Kaiyang Emperor licked his lips and said. Although Jian Wushuang was not dead at the moment, they already regarded Jian Wushuang as a dead person and began to divide up the magic weapon on Jian Wushuang. The power of endless power dissipated, and I saw the wave of destruction condensed in Longqing's mouth. Although the power destroyed a lot, it dissipated the power of chaos, and once again greeted Jian Shuang's second murderous move. Taro Excalibur. In this sword, the vaguely blue-shirt figure before staring a lot, you can even see the delicate and clear features of the figure, which at first glance looks like it is too much to respect the world. It is also like a 9-day fairy walking out of the gate with a sword, one sword divided into the sea. This sword, which brings together the various blessing powers of Jian Wushuang, is his peak hit today and his most brilliant hit. Under this sword, the entire universe of starry sky is bursting. Even the top lords, such as the Black Robe Man and the Blue Dog Supreme, felt a sharp sword sweeping across them, and couldn't help but step back slightly. Taro Excalibur. This is the Taro Excalibur. Everyone looked up at the dark golden demon's sword with no hands in Jian's hands. The era of the Wushu chaos is too far away from them. Therefore, they do not know much about the Wushu chaos, and they are not too interested, but when the Tai Luo Excalibur dominated the universe, it was just 300 chaos before. Many of the Supremes present have experienced that era, and they know the horror of the Taro Excalibur. They looked at the golden light and let it go, as if shining on the eternal Taro Excalibur. Their breathing couldn't stop and they became a little hasty. Jian Wushuang, Mo said that you were just holding the Taro Excalibur. Even when Taro Supreme was alive, you didn't dare to provoke our dragons. What are you? Longqing disdainfully snorted, manipulating the continuous waves of destruction in his mouth, and greeted this unbeatable sword. Is it? The sword is double-sided and expressionless. The tailored Excalibur in his hand exudes bright golden light, cuts through thorns, and passes directly through the waves of destruction, breaking through all obstacle. Okay. Longqing was shocked. Since countless chaos periods, he has been staying with the dragons. He has never seen what the universe outside the dragons looks like. He has instilled in his mind the thought that the dragons are the entire universe. Big, most noble race. Therefore, he took the whole universe into consideration and did not put anyone in his eyes. The ultimate sword master Wu Shuangsu was even regarded by him as a pig, dog, and catfish that can be slaughtered at will. But now, when he looked at the sword, he knew he was wrong, and he was wrong. The wave of destruction that he used at will could not stop this smashing sword. This sword, not to mention the full power of the Taro Excalibur, but under the blessing of various mysteries of the sword unparalleled, at this moment has really motivated the Taro Excalibur. The vertical eyes of the hilt position, there are countless bloodshots converging into the pupils like little snakes, emitting a roar from the gods of 9 days. The sword was cut straight on Longqing. Wow! Countless dark golden dragon blood poured down, like a blood rain falling in the starry sky. Longqing himself was severely chopped and flew thousands of feet. The golden robe of the robe shattered, and a dragon horn on his head was almost cut off, and a deep sword mark was imprinted on it. Longqing half knelt in the void, slowly raised his head, a trace of dark golden dragon blood flowing out of his mouth. Sword unparalleled, it. Longqing growled violently, and the indifferent handsome face could no longer maintain a trace of calmness, and his forehead blue muscles jumped wildly apparently in a rage. Shame. There has never been a shame. He is a long-time leader of the 4th-generation bloodline of the dazzling dragon tribe. However, today, he was injured by a horrible master. This is the biggest shame he has encountered since he was born. This shame is even worse than killing him. Jian Shou's face was pale, his right hand was trembling, almost at the moment he cut the sword. Tai Luo Excalibur drained all his powers, and now all mysterious blessings recede like tide, sudden feelings of weakness never burst. This sense of weakness almost made him impossible to stand, the whole person was teetering, and the Taro sword almost came out of hand. However, Jian Wushuang looked at Longqing, who was embarrassed, but couldn't help laughing. He laughed crazy, laughed disdainfully, laughed unscrupulously. Dwarf dragons, but that's it. Boom! The jade pendant of Jian Wushuang's waist shattered, and the 2 ghostly ghost images condensed, and pressed hard again towards Longqing. This is the original Bloodwave Supreme, leaving a full blow on Jian Wushuang. At this moment, Jian Wushuang already knew that there was no hope for survival. He directly hit these two forces and used them at the same time. These two ghosts are as high as 10,000 feet, their legs are like mountains, their eyes are like stars, endless blood is entwined around their bodies, and after looking at Long Qing with a stiff and numb expression, they immediately raise their hands to kill. Jian Wushuang, just now you can hurt this seat, but it is the intention of this seat. Do you think you still have such good luck? Long Qing's murderous flickered, said coldly. In the face of this bloodwave supreme blow, Long Qing opened his mouth, and a golden fist with a big fist rose slowly from his mouth. Chapter 4378. Dragon Ball. Only when the dragons arrive in the Supreme Realm can they be thoroughly trained. I saw this Dragon Ball twirling slowly, but it was the full force of the initiative to hit the Bloodwave Supreme Void. The endless brilliance radiates, and it contains the brilliant Huang Longwei, the prestige of the quartet. Immediately afterwards, I saw this Dragon Ball, hitting the two with Bloodwave Extreme, and collided fiercely. I saw Long Qing's face flushed with a flush, and stepped back a few steps, while the Bloodwave Supreme Void collapse. This time, Long Qing is no longer so embarrassed. This is his true strength. Sword unparalleled, it's time for us. You can rest assured that this seat will not easily kill you. This seat will let you enjoy the most extreme pain in the world. Long Qing opened his mouth and took a sip, and the whale swallowed the water, re-inhaling the Dragon Ball. His dark golden vertical pupil twisted slightly, locked on Jian Wushuang's face, revealing a hint of Morihan's cruel smile. I saw him stepping, and his figure suddenly appeared in front of Jian was double-sided, right-hand fist covered with golden dragon scales, slamming his sword on his chest. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang, who had no resistance, had instantly collapsed and was torn apart. After doing all this, Long Qing didn't rush to kill the killer, blasted the sword Wushuang divine power all the way, but waited with distorted pleasure to wait for Jian Wushuang's body reorganization. The Supreme Master Bingyu and the Supreme Emperor Kaiyang looked at this scene silently and put away their supernatural powers. For them, Jian Wushuang is already dead, so it's better to sell a face to Long Qing and let Long Qing torture Jian Wushuang to death. Wow! Sword Warrior's collapsed body gradually reorganized. Long Qing punched out again, enough to flatten the supreme divine power of the star domain, all blasted on Jian Wushuang's chest, and hit his body again and collapsed. Jian Wushuang, don't you want to die? This seat just doesn't let you die so easily, and feel the ultimate pain in this world. Long Qing laughed eagerly. Time and again, Jian Wushuang's deities were constantly detonated and reorganized by Long Qing, and then detonated again. His bones had been completely shattered, and all the 7 meridians and 6 veins had cracked. The pain from the deepest part of the soul kept coming. At this moment, the sword unparalleled, already weak to the extreme, he didn't know how long he could hold on. He only knew that now he was already weak and couldn't even speak, and couldn't even lift his fingers. Once again, Jian Wushuang's deity was blasted. If he were not a super chaotic creature, at this moment, he was afraid that he could not die anymore. Sword unparalleled, kneel down and ask for mercy from this seat. This seat can give you a happy. As soon as Long Qing stepped on his feet, he stomped on Jian Wushuang's head and laughed scornfully. Jian Wushuang's pupils twisted slightly. Looking at Long Qing, there was no fear in his eyes, only sarcasm. His sword is unparalleled, rising to the blue fire world, walking all the way to the depths of the universe, tumbling through the battles. Whoever asked for more than half a point? Today is only one death, what fear? Long Qing looked at the sarcasm in Jian Wushuang's eyes, his face gradually gloomy. Shame to the face. Jian Wushuang, it seems your bones are hard. Then this seat will crush your bones, inch by inch. Let's take a look at this seat, how long can you stick to it? Long Qing's eyes flashed a fierce scourge, and he raised his foot and stepped down fiercely, and instantly crushed the sword's whole body skeleton. The sword deity's body collapsed again. Click, click. Slowly, Jian Wushuang's body reorganized hard. After this reorganization, Jian Wushuang's consciousness has become blurred, his eyes have become increasingly scattered, and everything in his vision seems to have double shadows. The sound in the ear gradually faded, and the picture in the field of vision gradually began to fade. The world seems to be silent, but monotonous in black and white. Long Qing was still laughing happily, while the other Supreme stood in the surroundings, firmly blocking the space, with a cold and ruthless expression, without any mercy. The frosty cold that was sealed in Zhentian Bay by him slammed into the blockade encircled by the Zhentian Bay in a frantic expression, with a painful expression, tearing his heart, and tears in his eyes. It all started to blur and be silent. Are you going to die after all? Jian Wushuang's heart surged into the light. He could feel that even if he was a super-perfect chaotic creature, under this blow of destruction one after another, he had gradually been unable to persist. He understood that his body could no longer insist on the next reorganization. At this moment, the past kept flowing to my heart. Master, I'm afraid I can't find you. Extreme blood, supreme axe. I can't help you revenge. The memories of everything fade away. He never felt tired, invading his body. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but sigh in his heart. After all, it is difficult to equalize. However, at the moment Jian Wushuang closed his eyes and his consciousness gradually fell asleep, he seemed to feel that an overbearing and vigorous blood was like the invincible figure of the rolling sun, suddenly in a destructive and rotten posture, like a bomb. The enchantment was torn instantly and slammed in. Leader. A roar sounded. Immediately, he saw a figure covered with white hair, but exuding a thick golden light, and Shensheng said, "Grandchild, this is the Lord in your mouth. The one who was in the ancient sky inside, the little guy who saved your life. Also ask my ancestor to save him." Thump. The overlord knelt down and rubbed his head vigorously toward the white-haired figure. Rest assured. We do not destroy the tyrants and never owe others half points. The white-haired figure nodded and made a punch in all directions. Suddenly, the sky was falling apart, the stars were shattered, and an overbearing force reached the extreme, enough to suppress the majestic power of all ages, surging up. As the ancient Tianting war drums were sounded, the fist on the white-hair figure was glittering with golden light, like pushing a rolling sun, a golden chariot. I saw that Long Qing, who had stepped on Jian Wushuang's chest, suddenly panicked. Before he could talk, he was directly blasted and turned into a black spot. Grandson, take your lord away. The white-hair figure commanded a word, and then turned his eyes directly into two blazes, looking at the surrounding Bingyu Supreme, Kaiyang Emperor, and others. I don't know if this 10,000 chaos era has passed. Do people still remember me? The corner of Bai Maro's figure opened, gradually showing a sneer of sneer. Boom. Immediately, I saw this white-haired figure blasted out with a fist, bare hands cracking the sky, and defeated the Supreme. With a fist, he burst the stars, and broke the galaxy with one kick. He opened his mouth again and swallowed a sun directly. He was full of golden light, surrounded by endless fairy lights, raising his hands and throwing his feet, directly leading to the void storm. He woke up like a fairy king sleeping in chaos, opened his eyes, and came to the world. In front of him, the sun, moon, and stars are like bullets in their hands, and the heavens and the earth are nothing but a foot bath. Can't use any words to describe his domineering and terror. Chapter 4379. The golden hair on the fist of the white-haired figure is like pushing the sun, and each punch is like a dragon, which directly punches the sky out of the hole, to the extreme. The faces of Bingyu Supreme and others sank, and the eyes were shining brightly. Today's sword unparalleled, I will wait for endless troubles, come together. Bingyu Extreme opened his mouth coldly and stepped on his right foot severely. A pair of narrow ice wings composed of ice crystals appeared behind him. Mystery, magic. He groaned, and the ice sword in his hand was fiercely like a provocative wave on the surface of the sea, chopped down towards the white-haired figure. Several other supreme expressions were dignified. After looking at each other, they also used their housekeeping skills. I miss the kingdom of God. I saw the Kaiyang Emperor tearing his hands, and directly surrounding the emptiness into a sea of blood boiling, the kingdom of blood rising at the beginning of the day. Mystery, meteor. Mystery, Qinghong first line. Mystery, 6 holy flashes. For a moment, in addition to Long Qing, who was blown away by a white-haired figure and did not know where he had gone, the top 5 supreme supremacy of the other 5 forces shot towards the white-haired figure. Little bunnies, when the old man was crossing the universe, you were not born from the mother. Seeing the shadow of the white-haired man, instead of having any fear on his face, he laughed loudly. I saw that his hands were torn, and the endless blood was boiling. He shattered the thought of the kingdom of God directly and swept it once again, and all the supreme masters who were killed towards him were split. All the supernatural powers that are enough to destroy the sky and the earth are banging on the white hair figures, but they can't even keep a mark. The white hair figure is like the ancient warrior Ling Shi. He shakes Kunlun with his hands and shakes the heavenly gate with his legs. Each punch and foot is like a giant axe that cuts the sky, making the world a chaos. In front of him, these top-level supremes, even half-step invincible supremes, which are enough to enter the top of the universe, are like adults hitting children. These top-level supremes have no power to fight. Click. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the ice sword extremity sword, which was cut by Bingyu Supreme, and said, "Little baby, you were too vain emperor in the temple that was too imaginary. When you saw your husband, you were respectful and did not dare to speak loudly. Dare you point me at the sword, dang." The white hair figure slaps in his right hand, tears the entire right hand of Bingyu Supreme directly, then opens his mouth and bites on the ice sword. Click. I saw the ice sword, which had been promoted to the supreme soldier, was bitten by a gap in the white hair figure. Click, click, click. After a few moments of work, the entire ice sword was swallowed into the belly by the white hair figure. The bi-marrow figure patted his belly quite well and took a long nap. At this moment, Bingyu Supreme was covered with sweaty hairs, and the sweat beads appeared on the forehead, and there was no fighting in his heart. "Senior, who are you?" he asked with a pale expression. "Who am I?" Bi-marrow said with a smirk, and replied, "Go back and ask your emperor, who is too virtual. That little guy will tell you who the old man is." After that, the white hair shadow looked around and glanced at the other supremes. The old man is now leaving with Wushuang. Who will stop the old man? As soon as this remark came to an end, the top and supreme people who had no one in their eyes were arrogant and embarrassed, and bowed their heads in silence. The white hair figure shook his head in disdain, glanced at the far-reaching Jian Wushuang, and held up the overlord with both hands, and laughed. "Grandson, let's go." "Yes, ancestor." Overlord hurried back. Afterwards, Bi-marrow's ancestors and Overlord left with stride swords and disappeared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, under the huge starry sky, only Bingyu Supreme, Blood Temple Master, and others were left, and their faces stood cloudy and uncertain. "What do we do now?" the Blue Dog Supreme asked. Bingyu Supreme glanced at him, and Lungheng said, "What else can you do? Why don't you go and grab the sword unparalleled from the old monster?" Shaking his head, Bingyu Supreme stepped and disappeared into this starry sky. The universe is gradually returning to peace. This plan of the 6 supreme masters, smashing swords unparalleled, declared defeat again. There was a sudden uproar in the universe, and countless people lamented that Jian Wushuang's luck was amazing. However, before this event began to ferment, a major event that really caused the universe to boil instantly caught everyone's attention and topics. The universe race event opened. On that day, suddenly a vision of heaven descended, and the mighty road came in mighty, and there was no sense between heaven and earth. Riki surged towards thousands of souls. The world saw only one day, and the number of wise minds was unknown. Many people were under the might of the avenue and occasionally got the avenue to break through the realm. A magnificent voice sounded through the world. "It's time, I preach in the palace of the night, and anyone who has my chance to come can listen." Immediately, thousands of people worshipped. Countless people look up at the starry sky, all are excited. Ha 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 ha, the grand event of the universe finally opened. The old man waited for hundreds of times of chaos finally waited until today. This time, I will be one of those 10 listening positions. On this day, countless old monsters trapped in the sleeping retreat awakened and went to the Lingxiao Palace. In addition, the universe, the top forces, immortal descent, ancient holy places, and a country of gods have all been invited to participate in the universe race, and have sent the strongest of their forces to the universe. A race for all peoples. The world is moving and mighty. Thousands of winds and clouds flooded to the Ling Xiao Palace. This cosmopolitan event will last for 60 years, and it is the biggest event in the entire universe that includes all races. At this time, all disputes ceased. Nothing was more important than the grand event of the universe. At the same time, in a swampy area in a remote corner of the universe, the three of them, wearing uniform black robes and black armor, had strange breaths and were hiding in the dark. Big 7, the cosmic grand event has begun. The height of 3 meters, as the Supreme said. The Supreme Man, who was called to eat 7, heard a hoarse voice and replied, "Bite 9, let's leave first." The old guy's eyes are very tight. Once he finds that we are here, he will most likely expose the plan. Yang Ju heard his eyes narrowed and nodded coldly. "Well, let's leave first, but just didn't find that guy, otherwise, I must crush him." Wow! A swirling inky black hole appeared on the bottom of their feet. The figure of the three of them was like being swamped in a swamp, and was swallowed up by this black hole vortex. "Well, wait, it won't be long before we come back." There was unwilling cold laughter in this swamp. Chapter 4380. 3 years have passed. Far north of the universe, one of the 9 forbidden areas. Under a 10,000-year-old iceberg. Old ancestor, how is Jian Wushuang's condition? Should he keep sleeping like this? The overlord placed the sword unparalleled on a huge ice bed and asked. I saw Jian Wushuang at this moment. His breath was faint, and his eyes were closed tightly. He had fallen into the deepest deep sleep. Next to him, the coldness of frost coming out of the Zhentian tablet, holding the hand of Jian Wushuang tightly, looking at the sleeping Jian Wushuang, his face was full of distress. The white-haired ancestor heard the words, shook his head, and sighed, "Grandson, this little fellow's body has been broken down 67 times, and he can still persist until now. It is already a great luck. But it has already hurt the source of life, and I'm afraid that it is impossible to wake up." Is that so? Overlord's face became a little heavy. When Cold as Frost heard this, she suddenly stunned in her heart. During her whole life, she knelt down to the white-haired figure, her original clear voice became hoarse, her eyes covered with bloodshots. "Senior, I know you can do it, please save my husband." "Hey, what are you doing? Get up soon." The white-haired ancestor quickly lifted the Cold as Frost and shook his head and said, "Girl doll, Jian Wushuang once saved the life of the old man's grandchildren. Our tyrants will never owe others. If the old man can save him, naturally he will not hell. It's just that he has already hurt the source of life, and ordinary means can't save it at all." Having said that, he sighed lightly. When Lung Rushuang heard the words, Zhao's body flickered, her lips trembled, and she asked in despair, "Senior, can't you really save my husband?" The Bai-Maro ancestor stood with his hands in his hands, nodded when he heard the words, and replied calmly, "It can only be seen in his own good fortune. And with the defect of the origin of life, there will be no more immortality. State, the origin of life will gradually disappear, and Jian Wushuang is afraid that it will truly fall." Speaking of which, Bai-Maro's ancestors were pale as Cold as Frost, and almost collapsed, and he comfortedly added, "However, you don't have to worry about it. The old man's piece of mysterious ice can be the biggest to the extent that Jian Wushuang's vitality fades away. Jian Wushuang wants to truly fall, at least it will take several chaotic periods." Cold as Frost heard this, couldn't help it anymore, his face became pale, like falling into an ice cellar, his body was cold. When the overlord on the side saw this, he seemed to think of something, and looked at Bai-Maro's ancestors repeatedly, but finally, a decisive expression appeared in his eyes, and he bit his teeth. "Our ancestors, there is no secret technique." Nonsense. Before the overlord had finished speaking, the white-haired ancestor glared at him severely and scolded, "Grandson, come out with me." After that, Bai-Maro's ancestor took the lead in getting out of this ice cave. I saw the snow outside the ice cave, and the world was white at a glance, and countless mountains in the distance were snow-capped, as if snow dragons were lying on their backs. The Overlord silently followed behind by Maro's ancestors, and allowed Piaro Shui to fall on the shoulders of the two, stained with frost. Grandson, I know what you want to say, but that mystery must be guided by the domineering essence and blood. The old man can save this sword unparalleled. It is already a kindness for you. Do you still want the old man to serve him? Couldn't the essence and blood of the destiny be fulfilled? The white-haired ancestor turned his back to the Overlord, and Shensheng said, Alas! Our ancestor, please save people to the end and send the Buddha to the west. I am willing to donate my own essence and blood. The Overlord knelt down on the white-haired ancestor and buried his head. Do you give your destiny? By Maro ancestors snorted coldly and said, Miscellaneous people. Our tyrants are scarce. There are very few who can truly awaken immortal tyrants. Since my eternity afterwards, it has been hard to awaken. You alone, now that you want to donate your blood for the sake of an outsider? Do you want to break the supreme? Where do you put our tyrants? Prank. When Bai Maro's ancestor finally came out with the word Neo-Ao, it was really moving, and an iceberg in the distance suddenly exploded. The Overlord trembled when he heard the words, but when he took a deep breath, he summoned the courage to say, Old ancestor, the reason why I want to save the sword unparalleled in this way is for the consideration of our overlords. Oh, for our bullies. The white-haired ancestor turned around and looked down at the Overlord who was kneeling in front of him, and said sneer, Then you talk about it, how do you think about this way of thinking? The Overlord nodded and said in a deep voice, Our ancestor, as you said, we are a rare family of overlords, and there are even fewer who can truly awaken the overlords. Because of this, our overlords are only in the universe. Among the clan, we have not been able to become the top clan. However, if we have the help of Jian Wushuang, maybe we can become the top clan in the universe, and it will be prosperous forever. Eternal prosperity. Just because he is a little guy who hasn't broken the supreme and cannot protect himself. Bai Maro's ancestor laughed out loud as if he had heard some funny jokes. Good. However, the Overlord nodded his head and replied, Our ancestor, you do know Jian Wushuang, so you will say so. But I know him. Do you know, the first time I met Jian Wushuang, he is only a 5th level master, but in just tens of thousands of years, he is enough to kill the supreme. Our ancestor, what is this concept? I have always seen people very accurately. Jian Wushuang is a man who has repayment and revenge. We will save Jian Wushuang once today. If he can survive, he will return in the future. Definitely not comparable today. Seeing Bai Maro's ancestor still wanting to speak, the Overlord directly drew his head down deeply, and said in a long voice, I also ask my ancestor to help his grandson once, and he will pave the way for his grandson. You. The white-haired ancestor heard the words, the color of groan flashed on his face, finally sighed, took a step forward, and touched the head of the Overlord's head. Well, anyway, the old man's path of cultivation has come to his head, even if let's bet on the future now. Speaking of which, I saw the Overlord rushing to his feet, and his face floated with joy, and he was about to thank him. He saw the white-haired ancestor glaring at him again and said, Not only is the elbow turning outward, but it is also frizzy. System. Seeing the Overlord smirk www.mtl Novelle. The white-haired ancestor couldn't help but feel angry and funny, finally shook his head and said, The old man can now use his natural blood and blood to perform the secret technique to save the sword unparalleled, but I said ugly at the front. This is tantamount to giving Jian Wu a double body shape and creating an indestructible domineering body. The chances of success are slim, but 1% if he cannot support himself, but the source of life completely collapses and falls, then leave the old man to blame. This. The Overlord couldn't decide for a moment when he heard the words, and said, Our ancestor, how about letting the sword unparalleled pair decide? The white-haired ancestor nodded, heard a word, stepped out, and stepped into the ice cave again. I saw the ice-cold bed, cold as frost, kneeling beside Jian Wushuang, his fingers touching the face of Jian Wushuang, his eyes burst into tears, his voice choked. The white-haired ancestor saw this, his eyes flickered, and a deep voice spoke. Women, my husband sent swords without a match, but there is also the risk of falling, do you want it or not? Chapter 4381. Good Fortune? Lung Rushuang heard the words for a moment, and then he was a little confused. Senior, please tell me more. The white-haired ancestor nodded and replied, the old man has a way to save Jian Wushuang, which is based on the blood of the old man, so that he can exchange blood and awaken the domineering body. Once Jian Wushuang can awaken the domineering body, the source of life will tend to eternity, truly immortal, he will naturally survive. However, the old man needs to remind you that even if it is a tyrant, there is a tyrant blood in the body. If you want to awaken the tyrant, it is only a 1/10 chance. Moreover, Jian Wushuang does not yet have a tyrant blood. It was just taking the blood of the old man as a guide. Once he failed to awaken the domineering body, he was afraid that he would really fall. After speaking, Bai Mao's ancestor stopped talking, but stared coldly at Frost. He confessed that he had done everything right, and the rest was left to him to decide by himself. Lung Rushuang heard the expression for a while, then took a deep breath, and thanked him and said, "Thank you for your advice, but this matter is very important. I want to think about it first." "It's natural." The white-haired ancestor nodded, smiled slightly, and then got up and left the ice cave, and Ren Rungru weighed the pros and cons himself. After Bai Mao's ancestors left, the ice cave suddenly became silent. Cold as Frost stood beside Jian Wushuang, his thumb with a gentle divine power, wiped off the thin frost on Jian Wushuang's face. His expression was bewildered. She wanted Jian Wushuang to come alive, but she was more afraid of the mystery failure. Jian Wushuang fell directly and left him. Her heart was like swinging on a swing. "Fu Jun, what do you say I should do?" Cold as frosting to himself, he put his head on Jian Wushuang's chest, listening to Jian Wushuang's weak heartbeat. Time passes slowly, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Bai Mao's ancestors have never stepped into the ice cave ever since he made that remark on that day. The overlord came in a few times, and tried to say something, but was swallowed by him, and finally just looked at Jian Wushuang for a while and then left. A year has passed. In this snow and ice forbidden area, there is no night and day, and it will always be white and blank, and the concept of time cannot be distinguished. Lung Rushuang is like a sculpture, forgetting to practice, and forgetting to practice, so he stubbornly stood by Jian Wushuang. She was struggling internally. If she did not use the secret method, 1 day sooner or later, Jian Wushuang would really leave him, and if she used the secret method, although Jian Wushuang might be awake, or even go further, there is a greater possibility that she would be buried. To die. Then, it is equivalent to killing her close lover herself. How can this be tolerated? Time was spent in my thoughts until one day, when she felt cold and saw Jian Wushuang's hair slowly turn to grey, she couldn't help it anymore. "Fu Jun, I think if you can make your own choice, you will definitely choose to fight once." At this moment, Lung Rushuang remembered a lot of things, remembered that Jian Wushuang turned to fight 3,000 miles, one sword was once a million division. Think of Jian Wushuang's countless counterattacks, and then stood up. At this moment, the heavens in her heart finally tilted towards the side of mystery. "Fu Jun, if you wake up, you will naturally be happy, but if you fail to wake up and die, then I am as cold as a frost, but if I accompany you to death, what fear? Shong Po Green Fel Huangquan, I am as cold as frost to accompany you to rush and die without regret." There was a wave of firmness in the cold, frosty eyes, took a deep breath, and strode out of the ice cave. Outside the ice cave, Bai Mao's ancestor was sitting in front of the thousands of ice lakes, holding a bamboo pole and fishing quietly. Hearing the frosty footsteps, Bai Mao's ancestor did not turn back and said lightly, "Girl doll, are you ready to make a decision?" Lung Rushuang nodded his head and said firmly, "Also ask my predecessors to perform magical powers and save my husband. Do you really regret it?" "Not regret." "Good." A smile appeared on Bai Mao's ancestor's face, shook his fishing rod, and stood up. "Then let's get started." Bai Mao's ancestors strode into the ice cave, followed by Ba Wang and Lengris Huang. "You don't need to come in, just wait for the old man outside." The overlord and Lung Rushuang heard each other and stopped. The snow and ice outside the ice caves are getting bigger and bigger, and there is a great deal of momentum. Overlord and Cold as Frost began to wait quietly. Inside the ice cave, The white-haired ancestor stood with his hands in his hands, glanced at the sword Wushuang lying on the Wanzai Shenbing, and murmured to himself, "The good wind relies on strength to send me to Qingyun. Little man, the old man will give you this good fortune. Whether you can go straight to Qingyun depends on your own ability. Don't let the old man down." Suddenly, the white hair ancestors were covered with golden light, all white hair was scattered, revealing a magnificent and majestic body. His eyes were like fire, his blood was exuberant, and his whole body was glittering with gold light, just like the gold-armored war who stepped out from 9 days. Next moment, he pointed out his index finger, and banged it on Jian Wushuang's eyebrow. A tiny bit of golden blood broke out from his fingertips, entered the heart of Jian Wushuang's eyebrows, and was quickly absorbed. As the ancestors of Bai Mao's ancestors were absorbed, I saw Jian Wushuang's pale and bloodless face, and suddenly a faint reddish-grey hair, and turned black again. In contrast, Bai Mao's ancestors, who were originally burly and tall, gradually dried up, and their original radiance like the sun was gradually diminishing. Do you want a few drops of sperm blood to dominate the world, reverse life and death, and reshape the source of life? The price of Bai Mao's ancestors is far more than telling the Overlord. Time flies, years go by, and in the blink of an eye, it's been years. Click. The gate of the ice cave opened, and Bai Mao ancestor stepped out of the ice cave. "Girl doll, my husband has 10 good-looking pills here, and every so often, you swallow the sword warrior. As for whether he can wake up, it depends on him." Bai Mao's ancestor's eyes can hardly hide the tiredness. With a wave of his hand, he took out a jade bottle and said, "Thank you for your elders. The elders, my husband and I are unforgettable." Cold as Frost suddenly rejoiced. After receiving the jade bottle, he made a loud noise towards the white-haired ancestor. "No need." The white-haired ancestor shook his head, then stepped forward and disappeared in front of them. Not as Cold as Frost quickly entered the ice cave. I saw Jian Wushuang lying on the ice bed. Although he was still not awake, the complexion on his face was no longer pale, but a little ruddy. 10 days later, as Cold as Frost, he took a long-sized Dan pill from the jade bottle and carefully inserted it into Jian Wushuang's mouth. Later, she began to wait for Jian Wushuang's transformation. Chapter 4382, Dark. Endless darkness. Jian Wushuang felt as if he had fallen into an eternal void, where everything was still, there was no sun, no moon, no stars, no day and night. Jian Wushuang felt himself, and turned into a ray of energy scattered in this void. He was so confused, he didn't know where he came from or where he was going. He wandered like this, not knowing how long it had been, maybe it was an instant, or maybe 10,000 years, and suddenly, in the endless night, there was a hint of redness. A trace of red. Subsequently, this yin hong became more and more and more. The world is no longer monotonous black, but is rendered into a bright red. Suddenly, a ray of light exploded in Jian Wushuang's consciousness. He began to have sensations, touches, pain, all feelings and memories, how the tide was flowing. "I am swordless." Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's consciousness awakened from his deep sleep. He didn't wait for him to think about it. When he wasn't fallen, a magnificent force that broke the world. No, it should be said to be energy. Into his body, pain. Heartbreaking pain. Under this violent and magnificent force, Jian Wushuang felt that his body was torn by the burst. This great power comes from his blood. His blood was burning like a flame, and he wanted to burn him all. No, exactly, it should be a foreign blood, constantly tearing the particles, atoms, and cells in his own blood, so as to replace it. This blood, as vigorous as the rising sun, with endless vitality, made a radical change in his body. Under this change, his missing and lost life source began to repair step by step, and moved in another direction. At the same time, inside the ice cave, Bai Mao's ancestors, as Cold as Frost, were all around Jian Wushuang, watching Jian Wushuang. At this moment, the sword was unparalleled. I saw that his eyes were still closed and fell asleep, but he was aware of it. He seemed to be experiencing something extremely painful. His eyebrows were wrinkled, his eyelashes were constantly fluttering, his body was red and hot, and he even opened them from time to time. Road crack. Senior, what is my husband doing now? Cold as frost asked anxiously. The white-haired ancestor's eyes flashed, and Wen Yang said, Women, do you know the story of breaking a cocoon into a butterfly? Jian Wushuang is now experiencing the most critical step of breaking a cocoon into a butterfly. If he can survive, it will sublime as much as possible, break the life sacrifice, and recover, awaken the indomitable body, and then go further. But if he can't survive it, he will die, and everything will become nothing. When Lung Rushuang heard this, a heart tightened instantly and couldn't help asking, Senior, what can I do? You. Patriarch Bai Maro gave him a glance and shook his head. The only thing you can do now is to wait quietly and see how he experiences this transformation. This transformation is both good and bad. Blessing or misfortune lies in his own thoughts. Cold as frost heard the words, stopped talking, converged his thoughts, and silently prayed in his heart. Time is gone, it is a few years. 30 years have passed since the moment Sword Wushuang was rescued. Overlord has departed and headed for the cosmopolitan event. Stuck. I saw the godless body of the sword at this moment, already covered with numerous dense cracks, like a patchwork of ceramics, and it seemed that it would soon be broken. His eyebrows were tightly twisted, and his face was full of pain. It seems that this little fellow, Jian Wushuang, can't stand it. The white-haired ancestor shook his head and said Shensheng. At this point, Bai Maro's ancestor sighed softly and said, Even if it is our tyrants, it is extremely difficult to awaken the indomitable tyrants, not to mention the young man Jian Wushuang. Failure is justified. Is that so? Cold as frost heard the words, could not help but utter a grin. All efforts are in vain in the end. At this moment, cold as frost as death. She gently held Jian Wushuang's palm, wiped some wet eyes, and squeezed a strong smile on her face. First, she thanked the white-haired ancestor, and then looked at Jian Wushuang. Tenderness. Fu Jun, it's okay, even if it's dead, I will accompany you. Seeing this, the ancestor of Bai Maro could not help but sigh again, I'm crazy. Click and wipe. There are more and more cracks in Jian Wushuang's body. Just when Jian Wushuang's body is about to burst completely, life is on the verge of collapse. Suddenly, one came from the depths of Jian Wushuang's soul, and the power from his super-perfect chaotic creatures burst out, turning into a mask, enclosing the entire sword. Under this power, Jian Wushuang's originally fragile body began to heal at a speed that was visible to the naked eye, and stride in a direction that even the Bai Maro ancestors didn't know. This is. The white-haired ancestor was startled, his eyes flickered sharply. He didn't know what happened to Jian Wushuang, but he could feel that Jian Wushuang's originally weak life source boiled violently, and his breath of life was like a raging fire, which was burning. He was palpitated by the scent of life that was boiling and burning. Perfect chaotic creature? Bai Maro's ancestor looked at Jian Wushuang in suspicion. Only then did he realize that Jian Wushuang was a perfect chaotic creature rare in ancient times. What kind of spark will the immortal bull body and the perfect chaotic creature collide with? In this case, even Bai Maro's ancestors could not give an answer. Let's go out, don't disturb him. He took a deep breath. Although he didn't know what the situation was, he knew that Jian Wushuang was undergoing a transformation that has never been seen before, and has never come after. This world has never transformed. What happened? Cold as frost heard a word. Jian Wushuang, may be awake. The ancestor of Bai Maro looked like a torch, saying it word by word. Afterwards, he took the cold as frost, left this magnificent ice cave, and watched from a distance. Grunt, grunt, grunt. A heavy gasp came out of the ice cave like a thunderous thunder, as if it was a flood monster, and began to awaken. Grunt, grunt. This gasp sounded like a big drum, dull and deep. Then, the sound grew louder and louder. At last an explosion that destroyed the world came out, and the ice cave condensed by countless chaos eras burst open. In this explosion, countless glacier exploded and ice peaks shattered to form avalanches of avalanches. In this scene of world extinction, a golden light suddenly rose into the sky, straight up into the cloud. Chapter 4383. Rumble. Snowflakes fluttered and scum splashed. That golden light shot for 9 days, as the same round of fiery sun floated, melting numerous snow and ice. In this golden light, a dark-haired dark man opened his eyes slowly. Sword unparalleled. Fu Jun. Suddenly, Bai Maro's ancestor's eyes flickered, and his eyes were crying with joy. I saw in the eyes of the two, the bright golden light gradually dispersed, revealing Jian Wushuang's upper body naked figure. At this moment, the sword was unparalleled, its appearance suddenly changed, and its thick black hair was breeding wildly. It dangled to the heel. The original white body was now covered with golden runes. This is nothing, especially the eyes of Jian Wushuang, the biggest change. That is a pair of purple gold eyes. Jian Wushuang's black and white eyes disappeared, replaced by a pair of purple gold eyes. At the position of his eyebrow, there was a purple Chuan mark. Chaos Overlord. Suddenly, Bai Maro's ancestor was shocked, his eyes showed an unbelievable look. He stared at Jian Wushuang tightly, breathing couldn't help becoming heavy. Senior, what is Chaos Overlord? As cold as frost, he asked in confusion. The white-haired ancestor took a deep breath, still staring at Jian Wushuang intently, and said with a deep voice in his mouth, "Girl dolls, all races of the world are born from the chaos of the universe. Ancestors, etc., we do not destroy the tyrant family, of course the same is true. And we do not destroy the tyrant family, the first person born in the chaos of the universe, that is, the ancestor of the tyrant, he is the tyrant of the tyrant." Unexpectedly, the essence of my domineering body actually let Jian Wushuang, the little guy, wake up and return to his ancestors, inspiring Yuanzu's chaotic domineering body. With that said, Bai Maro's ancestors' expression was wonderful. They are a family of tyrants, who have been able to awaken the indomitable tyrants since the generations passed on. Only a few people can think of a person who has nothing to do with them and awaken the chaotic tires. He can see that although the current sword is unparalleled, the Chaos Overlord has just begun to get started, but if it takes time, it will most likely grow to the level of Overlord Ancestor. That is where he is today. For the time being it is difficult to look beyond its reach. Why is this? Because Jian Wushuang is the reason for the perfect chaotic life. There was a pensive thought in Bai Maro's ancestor's eyes. Over 9 days. Jian Wushuang looked down at his flesh covered with godliness, his eyes flashed for a while. He can feel that there is a horrible power almost exploding in his body now. That power is the supreme physical force that blows the stars and blows the stars. He felt that now, he seemed to be able to blow a supreme with one punch. This power. Jian Wushuang exhaled softly, and immediately turned over with his right hand. Wu Wei's Excalibur appeared in his hand. He took the Wu Cry Excalibur, and swiped his chest hard, but it was a long stream of sparks, without even breaking the skin. How did it happen? He was a little shy, didn't he clearly die in the hands of Long Qing? Why not only did he not die, but he sublimated as much as possible, and his body suddenly became so powerful. At this moment, a white-haired figure, coming at a very fast speed, stood in front of him 1 step. As soon as he was about to ask, he saw this white-haired figure constantly looking up and down, as if he had been treasured, and finally laughed. "Ha ha ha, I did read it right, it was Chaos Overlord. Senior, are you?" Jian Wushuang looked puzzled and arched his hand towards the white-haired ancestor. He could feel that although the white-haired ancestor was exceptionally strong, he was not malicious to him, and there was even a kind of sameness between the two. The natural closeness of a vein. "Fu Jun, this is the ancestor of the ancestor. He saved you." Cold as frost came in the air, smiled. Immediately, the cold as frost told the white-haired ancestors how to rescue him from those 6 supreme masters, and how to use the secret technique to awaken him. Immediately, Jian Wushuang moved, and hurriedly and respectfully respected the Bai Maro ancestors, saying, "Senior ancestors, today's grace is like a remake. Such great graces and great deeds are not memorable. They will be useful to me in the future when the sword was unparalleled, Shongpo Bai fell to Huangquan, and my sword was unparalleled." The Bai Maro ancestor smiled when he heard the words, and waved his hand indifferently, You're welcome. You saved my grandson's life, but the old man just paid the favor for the grandson. Jian Wushuang shook his head and calmed back. Senior ancestors, I saved the overlord at first, but it was a smooth hand, recreated with your kindness, not the same day. Baimaro's ancestors were not arrogant people who pushed back and forth. He smiled and replied, little guy, you have the bloodline heritage of the old man, you can be regarded as half of the old man's descendants. So, what kind of accidents have you encountered, when my tyrants are in great danger and can no longer shelter the tyrants, you can take a hand and carry them back, and you will be returned to today's grace. How? This is nature. Jian Wushuang nodded firmly. The white-haired ancestor saw this, and there was a touch of relief in his eyes. The sword is unparalleled, and the husband will not stay much anymore. When you are sleeping, this girl doll stays beside you day and night to take care of you carefully. You too should be gentle. After that, Baimaro's ancestors were about to leave. But before he left, he seemed to think of something again, adding, yes. The sword is unparalleled, the cosmic race of the universe has been open for 40 years, you better hurry up. Because the adult will immediately at the Grand Cosmos event, 10 people will be selected to become the children of the seat and listen to the last 10 years. You must not delay. The words fell, Baimaro's ancestors didn't hesitate anymore, and as soon as they stepped on, they were like a fireball disappeared into the sword vision. Has it been 40 years for the Universe Festival? Jian Wushuang's pupils narrowed slightly, and his eyes flashed thoughts. Immediately, Jian Wushuang converged his thoughts, his eyes turned to frost, his eyes were soft and loving. 1 year later. On the snow plain. Jian Wushuang wore a large black robe, and his back was too sacred. He walked barefoot. Every step he took was on the thousands of feet of ice, leaving a deep mark of fire. Schwanger, leave for your husband first, take care of yourself. Father, stand here waiting for you to return safely. Cold as frost, wearing a purple-fringed dress, standing behind Jian Wushuang, smiled slightly. It is good. Jian Wushuang nodded towards her, and then hesitated, pressing his right hand against the white jade card on his waist. That was the pass to the cosmic grand event, the Night Palace. Click. Suddenly, the white jade brand shattered, and a soft light burst into the sky. The next moment, the sky of wanly clear sky suddenly changed. I saw countless clouds torn apart, and a white beam suddenly shot down from the sky to form an aperture. Jian Wushuang stepped into this aperture. Call out. The light beam was withdrawn, the world was clear, and the figure of Jian Wushuang disappeared. To download the latest text ebook of this book, please click Book Mobile Reading, Book Reviews. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click on the favorite below to record this time. Chapter 438 Chaos Bully. Read the record, and you can see it next time you open the bookshell. Please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 4384. Whirring. A 9-day wind came, and Jian Wushuang was held up by a colorful auspicious cloud, constantly breaking through the void, shuttled through the crack, and swept away in an unknown direction. The sword stood without a negative hand, and among the purple gold eyes, the thoughts kept flashing. In this year, in addition to being cold and frosty, he spent most of his time familiarizing himself with this chaotic hegemony, and inquiring with Baimaro ancestors about the events of the universe. First of all, it is this chaos overlord. For Jian Wushuang, the previous self, whether it is the understanding of kendo, or the understanding of the laws of the universe, or the strength of divine power, is the pinnacle of the dominion in the world. Even looking at eternity, there are few who can stand by him. His only shortcoming, is physical strength. His body in the realm of can only be regarded as ordinary. Even some practitioners specializing in the body, or some races that are inherently strong in the body, are far more powerful than him. But now, as he awakens the Chaos Overlord, this shortboard is finally filled. And the advantage this brings is that now he is afraid that he will stand in place and let the Elementary Supreme come to kill. The Elementary Supreme cannot break his defense, and he can directly punch a Elementary Supreme with one punch. Burst. In addition, the avenue is connected. He tried to use the Taro Excalibur again, and the backlash that sucked him away instantly has been minimized. In other words, he will truly master the Taro Excalibur, no longer limited by the number of times. This is where Jian Wushuang is most pleased. Today I am enough to truly kill the Supreme, even the top Supreme can fight it. Jian was eyes flickered, his eyes flashed cold and murderous. I don't know how many void cracks have been shuttled. After a moment, a magnificent palace built on the clouds of 9 days appeared in front of the sword without 2 sides. I saw that the palace was lifted by gorgeous red clouds and paved with blue brick and white jade glazed tiles. There were elegant cranes around the palace shaking their wings to fly up and down, and a rainbow across the palace. Countless rich avenues, and the power of the rules, have brought a sense of calmness and affinity. In the middle of the palace, a plaque hung with the word Liaoxiao was quaint and simple. Is this the Ling Xiao Palace? Jian Wushuang sighed slightly. This Ling Xiao Palace is really like a fairyland, rare in the world. Who's here? Is there an invitation? Outside the Ling Xiao Palace, 2 soldiers wearing silver armor, wearing silver helmets and holding long rifles, stood at the gate of the Ling Palace, asking loudly, "Heh! That adult is really a big hand." The godkeeper who is responsible for the gatekeeper is a supreme practice. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, then stepped down, fell outside the gate of the Night Palace, grabbed his backhand, and grabbed the white jade token that was obtained in Shinkong Ancient Road, and said, "The invitation letter is this token." "Sir, wait a minute, let me wait and see for 1 or 2. The 2 gods will respectfully receive the sword token from Jian Wushuang, and after carefully looking at it, return the Baiyu token to Jian Wushuang, and say, 'Hello, please.'" "Well, thank you." Jian Wushuang nodded towards the 2 gods, and stepped into the gate of the Ling Xiao Palace immediately. As soon as I stepped on, I saw a long white jade staircase, which appeared in front of the sword without double sides. Next to this white jade staircase, a number of supreme strong men with different appearances are sitting side by side. Some are born with tiger heads, others are catfish become gods, and others are old friends with 3 heads and 6 arms, eyes full of faces. This is the top race in the universe. It seems that their order of sitting is in order of strength. The more they sit in front, the higher their strength. When they saw the sword Wushuang coming, a flash of doubt flashed in their eyes, and they whispered, "Who is this person? Why did you just rush to the cosmopolitan event at this time?" "Well, this person seems to be the ultimate dominator." "Ultimate dominance? Didn't you attend the grand event of the universe? Are there only the 3 ultimate masters who have qualified in the ancient road to the stars?" "Yeah, the Overlord and the real Luo Zi have arrived. This person is sword unparalleled. Jian Wushuang is here." Suddenly, the house was sensational. Sword Wushuang, in the near universe, is definitely a name like Lei Guana, the ultimate master of the area, but the supreme death in his hands has far exceeded the number of hand. You know, what a terrible figure this is. Even in the presence of many supreme masters, very few people have slaughtered so many supreme masters. The shadows of the famous trees, the supreme sitting on this white jade ladder, are almost all elementary or middle supreme, and his face suddenly changed slightly, looking at Jian Shuang's eyes, full of fear. Unexpectedly, the 6 top-level supremes at the time, including the invincible supremes such as Bingyu, strangled Jian Wushuang together and let him escape. Did he even dare to attend the cosmic event of the universe? Taishu Temple, Dragon, and other forces, this time also participated in the event of the clan. It seems that this cosmic event is going to twist and turn. On the white jade ladder, many supremes shook their heads to discuss. The sword has no 2 sides and no expression, and step by step across the stone steps. The stagnant power from this stone steps is almost negligible for him who now has the Chaos Overlord. Dragon, Taishu Temple. Are they all here? When Jian Wushuang heard the discussion, there was a flash of murder in his eyes. It's time to settle new accounts and old accounts. Jian Wushuang mouth corner evoked Mori cold smile. Flip-flop. This white jade staircase has a total of 999 floors. When Jian Wushuang walked to the middle position, there was no elementary supreme existence, almost all of them were intermediate supreme. When they looked at Xiong Jian Wushuang, they were a little less awe and suspicion, but a little more fun and teasing. Oh! Isn't this sword unparalleled? A stricken dog, dare to come to the highest level of the universe? Just then, a dark sneer came. Okay. Jian Wushuang looked up and saw a supreme man wearing a white robe with the word "too virtual" embroidered on his back, and looked at him with a sneer in front. People who are too virtual temple? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Zhennan, the owner of the third temple of Taishu Temple, I saw the supreme, stood up, and stood in front of Jian Wushuang, and said with a smile. Zhennan. Jian Wushuang thought about it. This name is a little familiar. It seems that when he was supreme in the ancient sky, he wanted to intercept and kill King Zhoujia, but later he was chased and killed by King Zhoujia. Finally, King Zhoujia let him go. Oh. Jian Wushuang nodded. Then. Get away. Jian Wushuang's one punch, Jin Guangkankan, directly blasted this Zhennan Supreme. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.